June is here. It's the time of year for the NFL news to gradually ramp up, lasting all summer long. Tonight, we're going to take a break from the Scott Fishbowl mock drafting to do a very early 12-team, one-quarterback PPR redraft mock draft. All of our drafters will have 30 seconds to make their pick for a total of 15 rounds. The big question we'll be left with after tonight: how well will all of this age? If you're watching this during the 2025 NFL season, then you're going to find out tonight. Coming to you live on Optimus Fantasy, this is Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan, right here on Optimus Fantasy. Coming to you live every Monday evening until week 1 of the NFL season. I am your host, Evan Sather. Unfortunately, my original guest couldn't make it this evening, but I still have another great guest joining me. He is my teammate right here at Optimus Fantasy. He is also a staff writer for DraftBuddy.com. I am proud to call this man a friend of mine. You saw him on the first episode of this show. Please welcome back Lou Brunson. Lou, welcome back to Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan. How are you tonight, my friend?
Thanks so much. Always great to be here with you, Evan. Can't imagine a better person to be here with Monday night.
I appreciate that. So we were just talking a little bit before the show how this is usually the time of year for mock drafts with your typical plain 12-team PPR redraft leagues like this one, more or less for like the degenerates like us. But getting a snapshot in early June, with the years of experience that we've had in fantasy football, how useful do you typically find these mock drafts at this time of year?
I think it's great. One of the exercises that I like to do with my mock drafts is less so looking at the specific names, simply because when you get into your individual draft, each one is such its own beast and has its own heartbeat and everything. But what I like to do with mock drafts is really try out different things and try different things on. Like if I'm starting off, running back heavy, for instance, running back. How do I come out of that mock draft feeling at the end? Does that feel like something I can live with if, okay, these are my options later on, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, whatever the case may be. And then trying that a few different times in different mock drafts and then swapping over to something else and seeing the difference in how I feel in those. So it's less so about the specific names really, and more about the overall construction and what I like and what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with, just as importantly, coming out of them.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. So this isn't so much of like gathering data to compare it to like July or August. This is more or less just to get to try other things out to see what you like to do. And is it strategy that you can utilize when the regular season begins? So do you have any examples of when you did this in years past?
Oh boy, nothing specifically that comes to mind, but like in my home league, we would know our draft slot roughly a month ahead of time. And I would just spam mock drafts over and over and over again. Kind of just like I was describing, where I was, okay, today, this is what I'm going to do. And I would do like 4 or 5 mock drafts. And this is, and you get used to, okay, these are the names I'm going to end up with in these specific slots just because of ADP is what it is. But it really made a difference in how I approached my draft, where yes, I might lose out on guys that I wanted to draft in specific slots, but I never felt like I got, my guy taken out from underneath me and I was in a panic now and tilted because I knew what I was doing. I was very, very comfortable with it every single time.
Good, yeah. I can't say I've ever really approached my mock drafts the same way. I usually try to simulate them as best as I can with what I'm expecting in the regular draft when that comes up, but you know how it goes, especially for redraft. It never goes the way that it's automated, or even with specific people who say that they're, or maybe not say that they're going to do a certain thing, but they show that they're going to do a certain thing, and it never reflects upon your league. Everybody's leagues are unique, but that's okay because it doesn't hurt to compare and contrast, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's what makes this so fun and awesome, right? Especially home leagues where ADP just goes out the window. You've got that one person showing up to the draft with a magazine from April and 6 beers in, and they end up taking that guy that's been on IR for 2 months in the 7th round. And that's, and then of course they end up going on to, be a finalist, semifinalist, and that sort of thing. And because, at the end of the day, none of us know anything, and it's awesome.
So you bring up an interesting point, Lou. Have you ever used a magazine for your ADP or just general fantasy football advice, especially in the days before the internet really took off with this? Have you ever used one during a draft?
Yeah, absolutely. Mostly for cheat sheets, simply because, I've been, even in the days before before it was as automated as now, at least, just to keep track of who's left on the board, who am I actually interested in, versus trying to get up there to the sticker board and going, because, that's never fun for anybody.
I can't wait for Scott Fishbowl to do the sticker board for the first time. So I don't want to keep the people waiting in our mock draft this evening, so let's just go through the settings real quick here. This is about as vanilla, plain, and generic as possible for a 12-team league. We got 15 rounds where we're going to keep a shorter clock in the interest of time for this show. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex spots, and 5 bench spots. That makes it easy for everybody involved. That leaves plenty of waiver wire additions and whatnot for everybody. So I think we're going to bring this up, and I think we're going to get started. What do you think, Lou? Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go. Looks like we're full, which is great. Early June. I love it.
Everybody's excited in the chat, so let's do this. All right. I'm going to mute this sound on my end, too. So we got Nate picking Jamar Chase number 1 overall. This is a question I asked you already, though, Nate. Based off of sleeper ADP, we got Chase off the board and Jefferson off the board. How do you go wrong with either of those 2 wide receivers going first? Oh, and then you got CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah. I don't really think you can. I am not as high on Justin Jefferson, and that's nothing against the player himself. He is obviously amazing. And I'm a big believer in Kevin O'Connell as well, and I think JJ McCarthy is going to be okay enough. The big thing is that since Cousins left, Jefferson hasn't been the I'm going to win you this week myself. Not on the level of a CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase. I think he's great. I think he is absolutely worthy of a first-round pick. I just don't have him in a tier with the other 2 at this point.
So I think it's interesting that you say that, because Justin Jefferson has been an example of a stud wide receiver who is basically quarterback proof. He's on that level with Mike Evans, where Mike Evans, when Jameis Winston was a rookie like 10 years ago, he made Jameis look like an elite quarterback. And then ever since famous Jameis left to go be like the Saints backup, was he backing up Drew Brees in New Orleans for the end of his career? Yeah. So he
came off the bench when Brees got hurt or retired. One of those, yeah.
Yeah, so he was there for a bit. Then he joined the Cleveland Browns as a last-minute quarterback addition and made the Browns exciting to watch, despite the fact they were not winning games with him. So there's that. And then Justin Jefferson made Sam Darnold and Josh Dobbs look like good quarterbacks. So Justin Jefferson, though, still finished as a top 5 wide receiver. I'm not worried about Jefferson with J.J. McCarthy making his NFL debut. Are you at all?
No, in a word. And going beyond Jefferson's impact there, it's Kevin O'Connell as well. He is, we've talked about, the Shanahan's being a quarterback whisperer and everything like that. Kevin O'Connell is doing things with, like you mentioned, Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Sam Darnold. The reclamation projects are, the list goes on and on. JJ McCarthy has more talent than any of these guys. And from all reports, more going on upstairs as well. I have no reason to think that offense will, if they take a step back this year, that it will be a step back for long.
I don't think it'll be for very long either. I can't see why that would happen in a Kevin O'Connell offense. And Brian Flores is still the Vikings defensive coordinator. I didn't hear about him leaving. So having a solid defense to back up your offensive play is way more key than I think a lot of people like to give credit for. Because if your defense sucks and your offense can't get it done, you're not going to be very motivated to win football games. So I think J.J. McCarthy's going to do just fine with Jefferson. And getting back to the draft here, I like how Brian at pick number 12 started off with Brock Bowers in the first round, and then following up with the most underrated elite wide receiver in the game today, Nico Collins. Lou, has Brock Bowers officially replaced Travis Kelce as the top tight end to be drafted in the first or second round?
For myself, I'm a little bit contrarian here simply because I have Trey McBride higher this year. But I mean, it's a matter of what flavor you prefer. I'm not going to knock anyone for taking Brock Bowers first. I understand all the arguments. I just think that last year there was nobody else. Now there are other people there. He will absolutely still get his. He's still going to be great. I just have McBride a little higher simply because literally nothing has changed in that offense of, anything of note at least.
I got to be honest, Lou. I am surprised to hear that you have McBride higher than Bowers. Bowers, I think, is tremendously better than McBride. Well, maybe not tremendously, but he's in the same tier, but I kind of like the targets and the talent that he has compared to Kyler Murray stinking up the joint with passes. I never liked Kyler Murray much as a passer, but maybe other people will disagree with me. And yeah, there you go. Yeah, see, you got McBride in the second round, and I think that's exactly where he's going to go in this redraft format. So I like the pick a lot. I accidentally auto-picked. I got distracted with asking a question. So I got Bucky Irving as my second running back. Going running back is something that I don't mind in this format, even today, because not sorry to all the zero RB truthers out there, but you need at least one hero running back to win. Lou, are you still on that same page as well, or have you found any cases with your own teams where going running back isn't necessary anymore?
Oh, it's definitely not necessary. I'm not a devotee of any one particular school of thought. I'm a do what makes sense for your draft. As I make my pick here and don't auto out. So I mean, I see the benefits of hero RB, and I myself tend to kind of go that way more often than not, simply because it feels better and I sleep better at night with it. I am almost always absolutely pounding the later running backs regardless, though. Like if I'm taking running back early, it is a running back usually. Of course, I say that, and last year I was coming out of a lot of drafts with both Barkley and Derrick Henry. So it really, as much as people may hate when I say, well, it depends, it does.
It always depends, because we were saying at the beginning, not every draft is going to look like what we have going so far. There are always people who have these anecdotes that'll say stuff like, oh, this one person in our league, this friend of a friend that joined, they picked a kicker in the 4th round. And there's always that anomaly that you just can't control and you can't predict in a mock draft. So my first wide receiver off the board was Scary Terry McLaurin. Are you worried if he's your wide receiver 1?
Again, I'm going to say it depends here. I'm a pretty big proponent of where is my roster? How does my roster stack up against others, position by position? So, for instance, if I'm going to, on average, score 10 more points at the wide receiver position, but 5 fewer points at the tight end position, that sort of thing, right? Having McLaurin as my wide receiver 1 definitely puts me behind the 8 ball at wide receiver by a decent margin, just looking at these other names going out so far, right? So do I like him as my wide receiver 1? No, but I can stomach it if I'm doing really good things at other positions.
So, for example,
here, Gibbs and Irving might be good enough at running back to make up for McLaurin as my wide receiver 1.
So Jamie brings up an interesting point in the comments here. George Kittle averaged more fantasy points per game than Bowers last season. And yeah, he's correct about that, as Nate Dogg accidentally auto-picked George Kittle in the 3rd round. I still have George Kittle as a potential top 3 tight end this year as well, because the wide receiver room looks a heck of a lot different with no more Debo and Brandon Ayuk questionably going to get the football. Kittle is still a top 3 tight end. Do you agree with that, Lou? And do you see anything different with this 49er offense with him?
Of course you have. So I do have Kittle a tier below McBride and Bowers, but Kittle is my tight end 3. The biggest question I have about Kittle is kind of ties into things that we've had discussions about other times with Christian McCaffrey, Pearsall, Jennings, Ayuk, just all these different aspects of that team right now. In if everyone is back and healthy, how does that pie get cut out? When with Kittle excelling last year, and he absolutely did, there's no question about it. He did it when CMC was hurt, when Mason ended up getting hurt himself. And then you have Ayuk going out, like, reducing the number of forks in that pie to beat that metaphor to death. Definitely helps that. And that's not to say that Kittle won't have his blow up games, because he's too good not to. But it's that variance, like Vince is talking about, it just knocks him down to that next tier, which is still a great option. If I'm coming out of my draft with Kittle as my tight end, I'm not unhappy about it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that as well, because tight end is already a position where it's very difficult to get consistent fantasy points as it is. And especially in this Kyle Shanahan offense, which I've talked about before, there are guys that in specific game scripts, Ayuk won't get the football, Kittle won't get the football, Debo won't get the football. Maybe they run the ball 90 more times with Christian McCaffrey. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little, but you know what I mean. There are just certain games where they just like to run the football more. Kind of like what Buffalo was doing in the first 2 games of last season, where they just ran the football down people's throats and people just could not stop it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Of course, as I see, James Cook get taken.
And nice pick with the Kamara, too. I think a lot of people, I said this on Blue Sky the other day, I am very appalled and disgusted at how much disrespect Alvin Kamara is getting according to ADP right now. He should not be going this low. Because look at how many running backs have been taken before Kamara. Kamara is still that PPR cheat code as far as gonna get the volume, because this Saints offense looks so scary. If Olave stays healthy, who else is gonna get great volume in such a bad offense like the Saints?
No, I'm right there with you. And this is part of the fun of doing this in June as well, is that we're going to see some of these guys, and I suspect Kamara is one of them. He's not going to be going in the late 4th round come mid-August. He's probably going to be a guy that is a 3rd round, possibly even end of the 2nd round type.
I should let you make your pick.
Oh, that's on me. Poop on a stick. All right, this isn't what I wanted to do, but that's fine. I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to warn you there, just so you don't auto-pick like I did.
No worries.
So even then, like Joe Burrow in the 5th round, I'm fine with that in today's fantasy football world, because you've got 2 solid wide receivers, you've got your hero running back, and you've got your hero tight end. I'm not mad about that if I have your team right now. Would you be okay with this in a 12-team redraft league like this?
Relatively, I would be a lot more okay with it once points start getting scored. Let me put it that way, because Burrow's fantastic. There's no 2 ways about it. What seems like every draft season, quarterback is very deep, especially in a 1 quarterback league. I have Caleb Williams not far behind Burrow at all, and we'll probably be able to get him at least a couple rounds, if not several rounds later. So I would rather have Caleb, considering the opportunity cost, I should say. But like I said, once points start being scored, no, I'm not going to be mad about having Joe Burrow.
I just picked Chris Olave with my 3rd wide receiver pick. Lou, if Chris Olave is your wide receiver 3, how do you feel if that's the case for you?
Like I need a good wide receiver 4, honestly. There's certain guys that I don't want to have to depend on, and Olave is one of them. especially a wide receiver.
So even if Terry McLaurin and Devontae Adams get taken as the 1 and 2, you don't like Olave as your 3?
No, I mean, I love Devontae Adams this year. I actually have him as your wide receiver 1 compared to Terry McLaurin. So I mean, that definitely helps offset that a bit. But no, and it's so many things, right? Like New Orleans it's had an albatross over it ever since Breeze retired. Olave, through no fault of his own necessarily, hasn't been able to stay healthy. One more good knock to the head and he could be done. And the quarterback situation there, if someone's a believer in Chuck, I'm not going to argue with him or poo-poo him because, none of us really know anything at this point. I am not personally. And I've also seen their other options. That's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, man.
So what you're saying is you have no faith in Spencer Rattler.
Or Jake Hayner, or Slut Bumwalla, or whoever else comes out of the woodwork.
Sorry, I threw up in my mouth a little when you said Jake Hayner with how horrible he was last year.
I mean, he was, but it's not like anyone else there was that much better. It really wasn't. I mean, Rattler looked like he had not seen a football field before.
He just looked like a deer in headlights out there against NFL defenses, where I thought he was fantastic as a South Carolina Gamecock, but hey, that's college, and that ain't the NFL, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm with you there.
So it looks like half of this redraft mock draft that we have going right now is pretty much doing the same thing as me, where it's running back and wide receiver, and that's it so far, just punting a tight end and quarterback. Do you agree with going this late for tight end and quarterback in a typical redraft league like this?
I think a quarterback I have no problem with, honestly. Like in a one quarterback league, you go as late as you want, as late as you can, and as late as you feel comfortable with, as far as I'm concerned. And that's been my stance in one quarterback leagues for a long time now, and probably will be until I am done with this game. Tight end, it really depends, because you're going to have some leagues and some drafts where tight ends fly off the board and you're going to get stuck just kind of playing that back end tight end one game. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not necessarily going to be a game that everyone wants to play. Right. There is something to be said for that. Okay. I've got Sam Laporta, and even if he has a repeat of last year where he wasn't necessarily the best and I didn't feel great about him, I'm okay starting him compared to playing the Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid, Brenton Strange game.
So you brought up Dalton Kincaid. You are the resident Buffalo Bills fan on Optimus Fantasy. You understand how the Buffalo Bills operate with the offense and the football, where there is a lot of people who have no faith in Dalton Kincaid this year. Some say he's bad. Some say he's perpetually injured based off of the injuries that he was going through. Didn't he have two knee injuries? I may be mistaken. Didn't he have 2 knee injuries that he was playing through, or was that something different?
He injured his knee twice throughout the year, but it was the same injury.
Right. So
if that makes sense. Oh.
Yes, it does. Yeah, I was trying to remember off the top of my head here. So what can you tell us about Dalton Kincaid and why people shouldn't shy away from him as a potential top 10 tight end?
I mean, the short version is that he had an all-time top 10 rookie tight end season his rookie year. The only reason people didn't talk about it more, honestly, was because Sam Laporta did what he did, and, I mean, honestly earned it, right? So that's fine. Kincaid still had 98 targets his rookie year. Last year, he, as far as a targets per game pace, he was on the exact same pace to finish with about 98 targets on the year. Granted, Josh Allen and him were not on the same page, and it was not okay. A lot of that was on Josh Allen. He missed, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, so apologies. I want to say it was on throws more than 11 yards down the field. Kincaid only had a 37% catchable ball rate from Allen, which is absurd when you think about it. And now my own personal theory is that a lot of that had to do with that knee injury and that he's not running as fast or making the cuts quite as well. Let me get in here and
Sure thing. It's like you knew. But DeAndre Swift in the 7th round after all those running backs went off the board. Lou, this looks like insanely good value to me because the Bears have not added another running back right now ahead of DeAndre Swift, such as J.K. Dobbins or Nick Chubb. If Swift goes that late, how insanely good value is that?
I think it's fine. Like, I'm not really comfortable going any higher than a 7th for Swift, partly because it's early June. You know, a lot of things can happen between now and the start of the regular season. And I'm still not a believer in Swift, the running back. That being said, he is the running back of the Chicago Bears right now in what looks to be a very good offense. As I talked up Caleb Williams before and took Rome Odunze here, I am a believer in the Bears offense this year, and I kind of want as many value pieces of that offense as I can have.
And being that you're the resident Bills fan of Optimus Fantasy, you can say that with certainty without the PTSD that a Bears fan like I do, where we've seen so much promise for the past several decades since 1985, and nothing ever reached fruition. And now we're just very cautious because we're like, okay, this looks great on paper, but we've got to see the product work on the field. And now that we finally have a real head coach with an offensive mind, it's looking really promising. And speaking of you being a Bills fan, Jamie asks, how sucky is Keon Coleman?
It hurts because I root for Coleman, the person. You see his personality and his work ethic and everything like that. I want him to do well so badly. I think he's a square peg being forced into a round hole with the role that the Bills are trying to get him in as far as an outside X wide receiver. And I think, excuse me.
Oh, you're good, my man.
Sorry about that. And he is a perfect fit for a big slot role, you know, that Mike Thomas slant boy type things, you know, across the middle of the field and run away. Like, he is perfect for that kind of role. And because Buffalo's wide receiver room is what it is, with Khalil Shakir there, who just got paid, and they have 17 slot wide receivers, he's never going to play that role there. So do I think he is sucky or shitty? No. Is he miscast? Yeah, and it's going to make him not a fantasy asset that you're going to want to rely on. And I can say that pretty certainly, sadly. He'll have his boom weeks, but, you know, so does everyone because it's the Bills' offense.
So Jamie then follows that up with Elijah Moore. Yeah. So I want to add on to that question as well. Does Elijah Moore make the final 53-man roster when the season begins?
I could see it as the wide receiver 5. I mean, there's very, very young and unproven wide receivers beyond that point on the roster. So I could absolutely see Moore sticking as the wide receiver 5. And I think he'll probably matter about as much as Mac Hollins did last year, where he'll have a couple games where you kind of raise an eyebrow and go, wait, he did what? And then he just continues to sit there on your waiver wire because that one game out of every 5 is not worth chasing.
I was going to ask you about Khalil Shakir, but I think we've asked enough about Bills questions for now. I want to take a break on the Bills here. So Fantasy Football Tavern mentions, loves the Caleb Johnson pick because Jaylen Warren is good, but nowhere near the same tier of running back as Caleb in the 40-yard dash time. Still haunting him. Love that value. That was Brian's pick with picking from the 12 spot. And this is Brian's RB3. So the rookie Caleb Johnson that the Steelers picked to replace Najee Harris, what do you think so far about him based off of what we've read and heard about him, Lou? Are you excited to take Caleb as a top 5 running back in a rookie draft?
Top 5? Boy.
I'll let you make your pick before you answer that.
Okay. I appreciate that.
We only have 30 seconds per pick tonight, so I can't be holding you up. Okay, go for it, man.
No, you're good. Well, and it also gives me a chance to bring up my rookie rankings here to see. Yeah, I I have him as my RB4 as among rookies. And granted, that's in a more dynasty setting, that sort of thing. I don't know what the Steelers are planning on doing at quarterback. I don't know if their plans and reality match up at any point in time. That could very well be incredibly ugly and just overall sad for a lot of the year. And a running back like Caleb Johnson is perfect for that sort of thing, where he's that guy that you can send out there and give the ball 20, 25 times a game. And I mean, maybe he's not going to be, oh, here I go. Maybe he's not going to be a stalwart, that sort of thing. However, I mean, he's not going to be a stud, that sort of thing, but he's still going to get that volume because, I mean, Jalen Warren is there. DK Metcalf is there, which feels weird to say. And what else that matters? Like Calvin Austin? Pat Freiermuth? Maybe Jonnu Smith at some point soon? And that whole thing just terrifies me.
So Gray Heisenberg was the one who selected Jonnu Smith. If he's no longer a Miami Dolphin and the regular season gets started, he's the round 7 pick number 10 off the board. If he's your tight end 1, are you at all worried?
If he's on the Steelers?
Yes.
Or if he's not on the Dolphins, because that's kind of two different things, but I'm assuming it's if he's on the Steelers.
I like that frame. I like that phrasing because it does matter if he's not on the Dolphins because Tua loves him a lot. And if he's actually on the Steelers, reunited with Arthur Smith, who's probably going to give him end-around goal line handoffs instead of to the running backs.
Right. And he's going to be playing with either Mason Rudolph or maybe Darren Rodgers. Like, honestly, if Jonnu Smith goes to Pittsburgh, he is dead to me this year. If people want to draft him, that's fine. Hoping to recapture that magic, that's fine. I'm not going to be one of those people. That would be heartbreaking because Jonnu Smith was a fun story last year. I'd like to see him, let's run that back. Let's, make some South Florida magic together. Yeah. If he goes, let's say he goes to Atlanta, let's say Pittsburgh decides to deal for Kyle Pitts instead and Jonnu goes back to Atlanta. I wouldn't like it as much as Jonnu in Miami, but I don't think that outright kills him the way that it would going to Pittsburgh.
So speaking of Kyle Pitts, he's currently the 131.4 in ADP on Sleeper. That puts him just ahead of Pat Freiermuth and behind Dallas Goedert. So that seems like a pretty decent ADP for Kyle Pitts right now as an Atlanta Falcon. If he is indeed traded as rumored right now, 1, does he go to the Steelers? And 2, do you think his ADP goes up?
I mean, I don't see how it should, honestly. I mean, yes, Bijan Robinson is in Atlanta, and so is Drake London. And Michael Penix is obviously a young quarterback, relatively unproven. But it's not like going to Pittsburgh would be improving the situation for him. It's not like he'd have less competition there. I mean, he is it as far as tight ends go in Atlanta. I mean, heck, we've seen Kyle Pitts in an Arthur Smith offense before, and that was what kind of started our long national nightmare, with regards to Kyle Pitts.
I was just about to bring that up too, where it's like, hey, Arthur Smith is probably like, hey, let's trade for Kyle Pitts so that I can continue to not use him. Yeah.
I'm kind of in agreement with Vince here, and that it's just I don't know. I would rather come out of a draft missing on Kyle Pitts and then he blows up than spend a pick in the top 15, 13-ish rounds. Like, at a certain point, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Take your shots, whatever, it's fine. But I also never want that shot to be on a backup tight end, and that's what Kyle Pitts is at this point.
For fantasy purposes, yes. Isn't that a phrase isn't that a phrase you never thought you'd ever hear? Drat! I should have drafted Kyle Pitts. Ah,
Man, I mean, heck, it would be the ultimate post-hype sleeper breakout, right? And I mean, I say breakout like his rookie season wasn't fantastic. We've been very spoiled with rookie tight ends lately.
So, speaking of rookie tight ends, we have Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren taken as the top 2 tight ends. Outside of those guys, I'm out on the rest of the rookie tight ends. I feel like Elijah Arroyo, Harold Fannin Jr., Terrence Ferguson, and the rest need to prove that they're NFL caliber and especially fantasy football friendly. Talk me off that ledge, Lou. Should I change my mind on that stance, or am I about right?
Give me 1 second to make a pick here.
Yes, you should. I like how Kendall picked both Warren and Loveland.
Yeah.
I don't hate it, though. I think it's solid because I think they both could easily be productive in their first years.
Yeah, and that's sorry. I got caught up in picks here and lost the question. If you don't mind repeating yourself.
Yeah, no problem. So, as I said, I'm out on all the other tight ends. I feel like Elijah Arroyo and Harold Fannin Jr. and Terrence Ferguson need to prove themselves in the NFL. Colston Loveland and Tyler Warner are the only ones I have faith in. Am I wrong for this? Should you? Can you talk me off that ledge if you disagree with that?
I mean, I might talk you off the ledge that Colston Loveland is worth investing in this year. The biggest thing that Warren has going for him is that the Indianapolis tight ends have been god awful for as long as I can remember, at least since, the days of Dallas Clark. And even he wasn't spectacular.
Peyton Manning looked like, Peyton Manning made him look like $1 million. And I see that you are also a Luther truther, just like me.
It's just I don't want another bear, but listen, if you're gonna just leave him there for me, I'm gonna have to do it.
Hey, man, this is the time to do it.
Right.
Sorry though. I don't know if I let you finish that last answer.
No, you're good. So yes, I see Warren having fantasy relevance this year. With Loveland, I love the talent. We've talked offline and that sort of thing. I love the fit of Colston Loveland there. And obviously I'm a big believer in Chicago in general. There's so much there. There's so much that he's going to have to overcome as a rookie tight end, which is very, very difficult to do, to make that transition. Cole Kmet is already there. I know you're a Kmet believer. I'm a Kmet believer as well. Whether or not, everybody assimilates into the Ben Johnson world and everything remains to be seen. But Kmet has 2 years of NFL experience that Loveland doesn't have at this point. And it kind of comes down to that. There's so many people there in front of him already that he has to leap. And even if he does, it's going to take time. I'm generally with you on the other tight ends as well, that they're kind of, I don't really see a point. The one exception could be Fannin. Partly who's there in Cleveland in terms of pass catchers. Yes, Njoku is, and he is great. And he's also hurt very frequently. Could Fannin end up seeing more time as a result with subpar pass catchers around him and end up earning more targets as a result? Yeah, he could. And granted, then you go back to the quarterback. Well, who's throwing that ball? And that's a whole other ball of sadness.
They haven't even named a starting quarterback in Cleveland yet, and I don't know if we're going to get that until possibly later this summer. Right now, it's all up in the air. If I'm not mistaken, they have 5 quarterbacks on their roster, which includes the man who shall not be named because, yeah.
And, at the end of the day, does it matter for them who the starting quarterback is? Like, I know it matters, but does it matter for fantasy?
For fantasy, I don't think so. I think it's just going to be a yucky mess that most of the targets are going to go to Jerry Jeudy and occasionally David Njoku, depending on game script. But I think we talked about this before too, Lou. Cleveland wants to run the football like they've been wanting to do since Nick Chubb was healthy.
Yeah, the problem is they still have the same offensive line from when Nick Chubb was a rookie. Yeah, and I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, right? So, please take it with a grain of salt and don't come for me. But at the same time, it's a lot more of those names are the same than I'd feel comfortable with. I don't hate it in theory. But in practice, I just, they're probably going to be picking at the top of the draft again, which is not a bad thing for them because, they're very accustomed to it. I don't mind the Cleveland running backs because they're going to see volume. At least insofar as who else is there, right? But the problem is, as bad as that offense is it going to be, if it's going to be a lot of 3 and outs or long fields that don't involve anything close to the end zone, do we care? And that's what's keeping Judkins and Sampson especially lower for me, is that outlook this year is just, it's tough, man. Pittsburgh and Cleveland both they've got some stank on them.
So Andrew Berry was recently quoted as saying that he could see Judkins as a bell cow running back. Do you agree with him, and do you see Judkins potentially getting 60 to 70% of the snaps, maybe not necessarily in the first half of the season, but once we get into the double-digit weeks, like by week 10 and onward?
I mean, definitely. I don't know how many people out there remember, I don't know how many people out there remember Nick Chubb's rookie season, but that's kind of how it went, was that he was just kind of used sparingly throughout the year. And then that second half, and especially the fantasy playoffs, he took off. And I could absolutely see a similar sort of situation with Judkins.
Jamie just pointed out that he profiles very similarly and could handle that volume. That's what it looks like to me, too, is that Cleveland knew exactly who they were getting in him, and they wanted their Chubb successor, and Judkins looks like that guy. But being that this is going to be a bottom feeder team in the AFC for years to come down there with the Titans, is that going to matter, and is that going to hurt him for fantasy purposes?
And I mean, yes, and that's why he's going in the 6th round. If we were talking about a running back getting 70% of the touches, 70% of the snaps on the Buffalo Bills, for instance, that guy's a 2nd-round pick, if not first, honestly. The fact that he's on the Cleveland Browns is why he's going in the 6th round.
Yeah, so I like the J.K. Dobbins pick, because why not take a shot on him just in case he does get signed somewhere? But as far as rookie running backs go, I can see why Dobbins is not yet signed, because this was a really rich class in running back talent. But yet, I don't know if it's going to matter for guys like Cam Scatterbo, because he's on the New York Giants, and he's going to be sharing with Tyrone Tracy at first. I don't know if it's going to matter which one is going to emerge, because that team is going to be a bottom feeder along with the Browns and the Titans again this year. I have both teams being the 3 worst teams again this year. But is Cam Scatterbo also a guy that you want to take a shot on down there with J.K. Dobbins?
Absolutely. And in fact, I was looking at taking him a couple of rounds ago. When I took Mason there in the 9th round. I have no problem with Scatterbo in the 9th round. I get the downside. Obviously, that's why he's going, similar to Judkins. That's why he's going where he's going, because there is a lot of downside there. But there's also a lot that he can do. Like he's not as fast as Tracy. Obviously, he's not quite as polished of a pass catcher as Tracy is. That being said, as a running back, he's very good at catching the pass. And he can kind of do all the things that you need a running back to do. Can he do them like a Bijan Robinson? No, absolutely not. Who can? But he also, his running style, and this is my lizard brain talking here, right? But like that hard-nosed running style, it gets people excited. It gets coaches excited, and I can absolutely see that vein bulging out on Brian Daboll's head, red-faced as could be, and him just absolutely eating up Scatterbo as Tyrone Tracy fumbles yet again, and he's just done, and then it's just all Scatterbo's show.
I mean, when you're the New York Giants, what do you have to lose at that point? Because you've got Malik Neighbors to throw the football to all day, but you're not winning games with just him, because the coaching is rather lousy. The defense, well, the Giants, they have flashes of promise with their defense, but then it doesn't really result in getting the dubs. So, yeah, I could absolutely see Brian Dable being that. Sorry?
That front seven of the Giants is scary. If they can find any sort of semblance of back end play, that New York Giants defense is going to be legit this year.
And speaking of being spacey, maybe it was my reptile brain that did the same thing, but I accidentally auto-drafted Brock Purdy. I have done this before in a redraft mock draft before where I'm not paying attention, the clock expires, and then I get my second quarterback. So I drafted 2 quarterbacks on purpose last year in a 10-team PPR redraft league because it was rookie Jaden Daniels, and I already had Jalen Hurts as my starting quarterback. The value was just so good, I just had to grab him, even though I wasn't planning on starting 2 quarterbacks because it was impossible. But I ended up trading Jalen Hurts, and I kept Jaden Daniels. Do you have circumstances like that in which you can justify drafting 2 quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league?
Sure. I'm not seeing anything in this specific one that makes me think, oh, that's a good thing to do. Oh, look, I spaced as well and got Cam Ward. That's fun. Oh. Didn't even realize that happened.
30-second timer, goodness. Man. It's throwing both of us off.
Oh, man. Right? It's fine. Whatever. Now I know who my first cut is. Yes. And really, the big thing that it depends on is, like you specifically mentioned, Jaden Daniels, that rushing upside for that quarterback. If he doesn't have that it's not worth getting a second one late. So seeing Caleb Williams going there for Deuce. If you're getting Caleb Williams in the 11th round because you took let's say a Joe Burrow in the 5th, I think that's a spectacular pairing because you're going to be able to trade Joe Burrow even in a 1 quarterback league to somebody, and Caleb Williams does have, like I was talking about before, does have that kind of that top 5 upside.
Yeah, no, wholeheartedly agreed. So kicker talk, Lou. I have Chris Boswell as my top kicker again this year. I like Brandon Aubrey. I like Dicker the kicker. I like Jake Bates, especially his time in the UFL. But Chris Boswell got a lot of opportunities with that shaky Steelers offense last year. I don't think the Steelers offense is going to be as good. They're going to find a way to move the football because, that's how Mike Tomlin's offenses go. So do you agree with me in that Boswell is a top 5 kicker this year because of how the Steelers are?
I'm going to say yes, based on absolutely nothing, because I know you love your kickers and I respect that and I love you for it. I cannot deal with them. And so I would rather not speak out of ignorance. I know I've watched Boswell enough to know that, yeah, he's a very good kicker. He's going to find his, like you said, it's Pittsburgh. They've made their deals with the devil. He's going to get his chances.
Absolutely. So I see that we have a lot of teams that are just foregoing the kicker and the DST. These are positions that you stream anyway, so even if you don't draft them, is it really going to kill you by week 1 when you figure out this early who to cut and who to keep, assuming this would be a real league, and you take shots on guys like Eckler, Estime, and then if they turn out to be not valuable, you just say, okay, I'll just cut him and I'll go get a kicker or DST. For crazy leagues like this that draft early, if this was real, would you agree with that approach?
Oh, absolutely. Like, just speaking of my own team here, even though I auto-drafted Cam Ward, maybe he comes out and he's amazing, right? So maybe now I'm in the position that you were last year with Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. Awesome. A kicker and a defense, I mean, yeah, there's going to be some, like, you're going to want, you're going to want to be starting Philadelphia's defense all year. But at the same time, do I really care if I'm going out and, picking up the New York Giants, for instance, off of waivers, only to drop them a couple weeks later for some. No, I don't care, especially as interest wanes and people figure out, oh no, my team's terrible because injuries, and I didn't pay any attention at all to bye weeks and all that sort of fun stuff.
So we're waiting on Brian to make his final pick here to finish off this mock draft. Thank you all so far for making this a really fun mock draft. And I like the McPherson last pick because even if you don't care as much about defenses, getting a good kicker like a McPherson is good because the Bengals offense is not going to struggle, at least a lot of the time. I mean, they struggled in the run game this year and giving up sacks, but they can get the field position to get Evan McPherson into good field goal range. So with that being said, that's the end of this mock draft. Lou, I'm going to ask the same question I do every episode. Mm-hmm. Eyeballing everybody from a 10,000-foot view, who had the best draft overall?
Boy.
As we sit with
I tell you, it's really tough for me. No, you're good. It's really tough for me. And part of this is, I will admit, is name value too. Nate Janke there from the 101. I mean, pairing Jamar Chase with Jaden Daniels, a running back room of Jacobs, Mixon, and Harvey. I'm not a Harvey fan, but as an RB3, sure, why not? And then just peppering the PPR of Debo, Ayuk, Jennings, Diggs. I mean, that's a team that it's got a nice weekly floor. It's got all the upside that you could possibly want, and then some. And even though you might individually hate Dallas Goedert and Dalton Kincaid, you're fine with them at starting one of them at tight end on a given week until we know more. We could see someone like I've mentioned Brenton Strange before. He's one of the guys that I particularly like this year and think he's going to do really well. You can wait a week or two into the season to get a guy like that in a 15-round draft, and maybe this is the year that Kincaid comes out and, Buffalo's guys are known for hitting their stride in year 3. That's a fine gamble to take.
I agree with you completely about everything you said with Nate's team because it's a good garden variety of PPR deliciousness, for lack of a better way to put it. Sorry if that's kind of the wrong word to use. I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head that was better. But it's like everything you said. You got a great variety of running backs between Jacobs, Mixon, and Harvey. So speaking of Joe Mixon, I believe a couple of days ago, if not a week ago, Mixon was spotted in a walking boot. Injuries this early where guys like Mixon have to heal up before the training camp gets started and preseason gets started. Is this at all concerning for everybody? Can we draft Mixon, an older running back, safely?
It really, here I go again. It really depends, right? For a rookie, it makes all the difference in the world because that's time that they're not learning the system, that they're not learning they're learning the verbiage. They've got the playbook, but they're not getting accustomed to the NFL and the way things are done. Mixon's been around for forever, right? He knows he's been in Houston a couple of years now. He knows what's going on. He knows what he needs to do to get his body right. I'm not worried about Joe Mixon necessarily. That, and he always seems to just have these kind of bumps and bruises sort of thing, which is fine. It's who he is and what he does. Conversely, you have someone like Christian McCaffrey, who we've talked about before, where he's been very healthy for the last few years. Early on in his career, he had that, he's always hurt, until he wasn't.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, you're good. And when it comes to the Achilles tendonitis, was that it specifically it? In both legs, I think it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for a 29-year-old running back, which again is not old, however, as violent as he is in every single movement that he does, I have a really hard time pushing that draft button for him. where he's going, as opposed to someone like Mixon, just because we have to have that nuance for each individual situation and player, right? So, okay, TLDR, right? Rookies missing time this early. Yes, it's a big deal. Yes, we need to pay attention. Veterans missing time because they have to undergo maintenance, that sort of thing. No, I'm not really worried. Veterans who we could be seeing the wheels falling off. Yes, it's a big deal. And yes, we need to pay attention, especially with the shenanigans that happened with CMC last year and that week 1, he's fine. Monday Night Football. Oh yeah, by the way, he's not starting tonight.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring up the Fantasy Football Tavern's comment too, commending your team, Burrow being nasty in the 5th. It's like 99% of Bowers and Kamara is my favorite dead zone back perennially. But you also drafted Luther Burden. Luther Burden was also somebody with a soft tissue injury reported about a week and a half ago. You were just saying in your TLDR, veterans needing to be sidelined to do maintenance, don't be so concerned, but rookies be more concerned with stuff like this. Soft tissue injuries, they don't scare me, Lou, but do they concern you for somebody like a Luther Burden?
Yes, in short. I didn't want to take Luther Burden, quite honestly. That was I want a wide receiver, and every time it was my turn to pick, I didn't have a wide receiver I liked, so I was constantly picking other positions. And then finally it was just, okay, fine, I'll take Luther Burden. So I don't love it. I don't love it. That being said, it's the 11th round. Once you hit a certain point, it's very difficult for me to say, okay, that's a bad pick. And that's kind of where Burden falls into at this point at that point for me.
Yeah, because we look at the other guys in the 11th round taken between Goddard, Tootin, Goff, Spears, Caleb Williams, Kyle Pitts, Jadon Blue, Jalen McMillan, CJ Stroud, Rico Dowdle, and then Kyler Murray. So people are taking quarterbacks that late. But if otherwise, it's backup running backs and question mark wide receivers like Jalen McMillan. So if you're grabbing Luther Burden that late, I agree, Lou. That's a nice flyer to take.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, ultimately, if he hits, it's great, right? Because, I mean, we've talked and we both like Luther Burden. It's, if for whatever reason he's one of the top 2 to 3 options in that Chicago Bears offense, there is every reason to think that he can step in and be that 80 catch, close to 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns as a rookie. Hey, that would be fantastic, and I will take that all day in the 11th round. Am I betting on it? No, absolutely not. That's why I'm taking him in the 11th round. But then again, like you were saying, those guys like, as I go and click on wrong things, is Jalen McMillan have that kind of upside? Probably not, especially with Emeka Egbuka there. Probably not. So yeah, I'll take a shot on Burden there. Why not?
So I want to do one more comment here for the evening, as the Fantasy Football Tavern also brought up my Gibbs and Bucky start, along with Devontae Adams being nasty good value in the 4th round, Hawkinson at value in the 6th, and usually a late quarterback guy, so Justin Herbert and Purdy is late is quite lovely, well played. Lou, do you agree with the Fantasy Football Tavern here based off of this mock that I did?
Yeah, I mean, as much as we talked about the Chris Olave pick, right, and how I'm not comfortable with him as a wide receiver 3, I'm very comfortable with Khalil Shakir as a wide receiver 3. So just kind of flipping those in my head, where Shakir's your wide receiver 3, Olave's your wide receiver 4. Yeah, sign me up, and especially with the other things that you did there, the Gibbs Irving start, getting the value running backs in Harris and Stevenson. We love our rookies, right? Rookie fever, everything like that, especially us dynasty-minded people. We also, as a community, forget that these old heads who have been doing it, and we may not be fans of these running backs, but they've been doing it well and well enough to get paid to do it. I mean, they're going to see volume. And then Hawkinson, I'm a little more out on him this year because of McCarthy and everything there. And then, of course, I speak out of the other side of my mouth and say, but Kevin O'Connell. So
Yeah.
I don't hate him. And again, what's the worst thing that happened? The upside here is you've got TJ Hawkinson, and he's TJ Hawkinson, and that's great. And the downside is if you're wrong, you're playing the late tight end one game, which if you're not taking Hawkinson there, you're probably going to be playing anyways.
All right, I think we're going to start to wrap things up here, Lou, but before we get out of here, I want to tell you all a couple of great companies that are doing some really good things, and we're going to start with Fast Draft Fantasy. We all know that you love drafting, after all, it's why you're here, and there's no better place to do it right now than the Fast Draft app. Get in and get out with short drafts you can knock out while you wait at the DMV, for example. The Flex 4 drafts are running hot, and the Origins Gamma contests are only half full as of right now. Head over to fastdraft.app and sign up with the promo code Optimus for a $50 deposit match as soon as you finish your first draft. That's 10 free drafts, friends. Head over to fastdraft.app now and get drafting with the promo code Optimus. Also, the Fantasy Football Expo. They will be here before you know it, and we've got you covered. The Fantasy Football Expo is a great chance to meet your favorite analysts from around the industry, participate in meet and greet sessions, watch live industry drafts, and get to hang out with a bunch of fantasy football fanatics for an entire weekend at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Join the Optimus crew in Canton, Ohio between August 8th and 10th for live meet and greets, golf tournaments, cornhole, parties, panels, and more. Head over to thefantasyfootballexpo.com to get your tickets with our promo codes. Optimus-2025 for $10 off the purchase of a gold, silver, or VIP package. Ultimate-Optimus-2025 for $25 off the purchase of the Ultimate Fan Experience. This includes a Friday exclusive meet and greet ticket to get up close and personal with your favorite fantasy football analysts. Limited number available. Lou, I think we're going to get out of here. This has been Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening, especially those of you who mocked with us. I'd like to thank my guest once again, Lou Brunson, for joining me last minute, and as well as one more thank you to everybody who mock draft, because one thank you is not always enough. I am sincerely grateful that all of you joined to do this evening. This was a lot of fun. It is darn near impossible to do a mock draft show without folks like you. Next week, we will be returning to Scott Fishbowl drafts. I will be having a highly talented fantasy football writer from the Football Guys and the RPO Football Show joining me for that. And now that we will soon know the 2025 scoring and rules, we hope. The scoring has not yet been released, but I'm going to leave you to guess who that might be next week. Coming to you live on Optimus Fantasy, this has been Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.